Finnish competent communicator and has served both as our club president as well as our immediate past president, providing me tons of advice over the last year to help us have as much success as we have. Our Toastmaster this evening is Maurice Heidelberg.
Thank you, Thomas. Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, we'll go over the agenda. I being the Toastmaster for tonight, and the grammarian for tonight will be Diego. And can you give a brief word about the grammarian role and the word of the day?
Hi everyone, I'm Diego. I'm going to be the grammarian for tonight's Hilltoppers meeting. And the double role of the grammarian is keeping track of how many times crutch words are being used throughout the meeting when everyone is at the lecture. Crutch words include words like so, blah, 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 but, blah, 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 blah. And like, you know, things like that that you use in order to fill the silence when you are transitioning between ideas or concepts. The grammarian also will keep track of how many times the word of the day is being used and by whom. The word of the day is myopia, which means short-sightedness both literally and figuratively. An example of this in a sentence is, having worked as a film critic for nearly 20 years, I have frequently been accused of movie myopia and asked how I could possibly pass judgment on the new big screen releases without any awareness of what was happening on the small screen. So those are the two roles that I will be playing tonight as the grammarian.
Thank you, Diego. Our timer for tonight, and who took the role of timer? Okay. Rosemary will fill the role of timer for tonight. And can you briefly explain the role of timer?
As timer, if you are giving a speech or at the lectern talking, I will inform you whether or not you are, I guess, working within your time constraints. So green is you're good, green. And then we have, what do you call this?
It's called Amber.
Amber. Amber is, so green is you've met your time duration, and then amber is you're halfway between the minimum and the maximum, and red is you're going over. So I'll just let you know where you are in regards to the time of your speech.
All right, thank you. Our general evaluator for tonight will be Cody.
Yes, everyone, my name is Cody Purcell, and I'll be evaluating the meeting as a whole, so giving a rundown of how the meeting went and introducing our evaluators for tonight's speeches.
With that, we will go into our first speech. And our first speaker for tonight has been a Toastmaster for, this is her second year being Toastmaster. And since there were originally no speakers scheduled for tonight, Tom was not myopic. He didn't have myopia as far as having a speaker. He took the initiative and took that role as the first speaker. So our first speaker for tonight will be Tom.
I give a sheet of paper to Rosemary. This is a pocket speech. I actually don't have an evaluation set of criteria. And fellow Toastmasters, honored guests. It's actually really neat to have guests tonight. So last week I introduced myself to a very select few of you who made it last week. And I tried to do a humorous speech. you can ask Rosemary. I think she enjoyed it quite a bit because she was laughing the whole time. I learned something about humor speaking though last week. And it was my whole effort was trying to actually be funny when I introduced myself. My last name is Jester. As soon as people hear my name, they expect me to be funny. However, I'm a civil engineer. In fact, of civil engineers, I'm generally considered the most serious group. I studied structural engineering. We're the guys who literally, when we screw up, people die. So we generally don't joke around and goof off a whole lot. There's not a lot of fun in the structural engineering group because if our calculations are off, somebody's going to get hurt. We're going to get sued, and we're never going to be an engineer again. So this is how I was always mentally, a very serious person. But my father, who's a lawyer, insanely charismatic, is hilarious, at least if you ask my wife. So, he always lived up to the name, and I never really could. I remember I was always written down as, in the math class, gifted. I don't understand how he does it, but always has the right answer. That was mathematics. That was science, too. The serious subjects. And you get me to English, the expository writing, where you can do whatever you want. D, I don't even know why he can't speak and write his first language. That was me growing up. Not funny, very serious, and terrible at expressing myself. The key to being funny is one, the best person in the room to pick on is yourself. And if you can do it with confidence, people are willing to laugh. I've seen many comedians who do this, but I didn't realize that that's the second part. Because the thing that's always made me not funny is that I would make the joke about the fact that I'm not real charismatic and I'm successful at making an enemy of an entire room in 5 minutes, including my own family. So it's not like strangers alone. But when you can do it of yourself and you have confidence in it, people are willing to laugh at you. Because if you have confidence, obviously it doesn't affect you. That's the truth about everything. If you go in with confidence, everybody thinks you're going to do a great job. And everybody will think you're funnier. Everybody will think you're smarter. I work as a project manager now at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. People like me. People think I'm really good at it. I barely know what I'm doing half the time. I am reading the rules and then doing what the rules say because I just learned them from a book. It's sitting on my desk next to where I'm doing the work I have to do. Because I have no clue what I'm doing. I've never done it before. I didn't go to class for this. They just handed it to me and said, go be a project manager. And I'm like, what? But you go into the meeting with confidence and everyone is sure you know exactly what you're doing. If you're trying to be funny, they'll let you be funny. If you're trying to be serious, they'll let you be serious. And that's a really important concept that I didn't realize that applied to being funny. I hadn't realized it applied to everything else. I got my wife through overconfidence in my abilities to woo somebody in spite of the fact that I am socially awkward. That confidence made it so that my awkwardness came off as cute and quirky and not weird and creepy. Because I look at things I did when I was dating my wife, and had I not done them with confidence that it would work out, I would have thought they were weird and creepy. Confidence makes a big difference in the world we live in. So I'd like everybody to go out from this day forward, whether you think you're good at it or not, convince yourself you're good at it, or at least good enough at it, that you'll be able to get by. And all of a sudden, things will go smoother for you. Because at least in America, confidence reigns supreme. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Thomas Jester. Now for our next speaker. He has been in the club for several months, and he has, I think, half of his speeches done in his competent communicator. So will this be a pocket speech, or will this be number 6?
We're going to make this service speech number 6. Who's going to be my evaluator again? Do we have an evaluator? Okay, then it'll just be a pocket speech.
I can do it.
Okay, thanks, Thomas.
Our second speaker for tonight will be Diego.
Fellow Toastmasters and guests. This speech is, again, we've already established that it's coming out of my pocket. But this has been a speech of mine that I've been reflecting on a lot lately. It dovetails nicely with the vocal variety that I'm assigned to do with this blue book, but also due to the base camp assignment that I've been assigned to do. When I took the assessment on base camp, and I let it identify for me what are my weaknesses and what are my strengths, it recommended for me to do the curriculum called Innovative Planning. And after doing the first assessment of the speech, of that curriculum, the second task it asks for me to do is to perform a speech, get feedback, and then perform the speech again with that feedback in mind. And the repeated word in that assignment is the word feedback. Now, that word has been stewing in my mind for a very long time since I started my AmeriCorps internship with Mobile Baykeeper last September. And it's also reemerged again with the chemistry class that I'm taking this summer that involves me tutoring, in many cases, a lot of my classmates, because I have a really good understanding of the chemistry that is being covered right now in the class. And I'm doing my best to communicate that to the other classmates in my surroundings, at my study groups, who aren't gelling with that science as well as it's gelling with me. And I remember the very first study group session I had with one of my student peers, they said the word, Diego, I really like it that you do congruent feedback. And I asked the student, I've never heard that word before, what does that word mean? And she explained to me, Diego, congruent feedback is when, rather than telling someone, good job out there, nice go on that assignment, really good, it's really great that you got an A on that assignment. Congruent feedback is when you tell someone with specificity, I like what you did there. So if I were to give a homework assignment to a student and they do step 1, 2, and 3, rather than saying, man, you really solved that chemistry puzzle really well. I really like the great job you did there. That's just general feedback. But congruent feedback is specifically telling the person, hey, you did step 1 really well. And I really think you did a good job of identifying that was the right step you had to do. And so when this student told me that congruent feedback is something that's really important in tutoring someone, my entire concept of feedback has been changed. Because now I know that if I want to make someone do something correctly, I need to be sure to explain to them what particular step they did right. Because doing a good job involves more than just going from project A to completed project B. There's like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 steps in between getting from an unsuccessful project A to a successful project B. And so it's important to explain to someone who you're supervising that they did all the steps correctly, that they identified this is the starting point, and this is the next step that you do, and this is the next step. So that was really an eye-opening experience for me about learning that not only is it important for you to give feedback, it's very important for you to give feedback on the specific steps that someone did. Because if you just tell them, oh, you did a great job, you're not explaining, first of all, you're not explaining to them that you paid attention to the entire process. You're just telling them, do this assignment, and you're off doing your own assignment, not paying attention to them, and then coming back to them when they completed the assignment. So you're not giving your full attention to someone when you're not doing congruent feedback, in my view. And recognizing the importance of congruent feedback, I think, makes jobs so important, and mentorship and apprenticeship so important, because You need someone over your shoulder from time to time, making sure that you're doing all the right steps, rather than just telling someone, okay, I need you to do this assignment, get back to me when it's done. However, I can also see the drawback to doing too much congruent feedback, because then you're starting to tread into the territory of micromanagement, and that's a very bad word to use in a work environment, in an office space, because now you're inviting a culture of surveillance, and that's something that we need to really avoid, I think, in the workspace. So it needs to be a type of measured surveillance, and I think congruent feedback really provides that important balance between blanketed, vague feedback and avoiding the territory of micromanagement. So in conclusion, Toastmasters and guests, this speech, the assignment I was given on Basecamp to talk about feedback, to take feedback and then to perform a better speech, in many ways just became the entire speech that I'm going to be receiving feedback on today. Mr. Toastmaster.
The next item on the agenda for tonight is our table topics. And our table topics master for tonight is Mike.
All right, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. All right, fellow Toastmasters and guests. First, I'm going to introduce what we do with table topics. We usually do this at the beginning of the meeting, but I just don't want to be consumed in myopia in that our guests would know what table topics is all about. This is the impromptu section of the meeting, which is very commonly referred to as elevator talk. You have any random conversation with either a stranger or a coworker, any part of the day that you just want to have a casual conversation going. This is the part of the meeting that will help you with this. In this table topic session, I will be presenting questions about summer, the summer solstice in particular, where I'll be asking volunteers first to come up and give a short talk on the question that I pose. It's 1 to 2 minutes, that's the time constraints, and they will vary as I go on. If nobody volunteers, I will call on somebody. I won't call on guests, though. But guests are welcome to come up if they'd like to. So now beginning. June 21st was this year's summer solstice and the beginning of summer. Summer in Alabama can be beautiful, can also be very uncomfortably hot. Is summer a season you look forward to in Mobile? Why or why not? Cody?
So I've grown up on the Gulf Coast pretty much my whole life. Definitely been in the South, lived in southern Louisiana for a little bit, so I'm used to the heat. So for you Northerners that have migrated down here, I know it's tough, but I'm used to it. So I always look forward to summer being, 15 minutes from the beach. It's just a nice time where people actually come down to my city and visit. Didn't have too much, action during the wintertime. So during the summer, people would come down on vacation, and my friends and I go down there and have fun, surf and skimboard, meet new people, things like that. So I've always looked forward to summers here on the Gulf Coast.
Thank you, Cody. This is my first full summer here, and I'm not quite yet adapted, but I'll survive. Summer solstice traditions are ubiquitous worldwide, from Scandinavia to Eastern Europe, even China. One tradition that I read up on in Greece involves all the men in the village making the biggest bonfire they can to jump through in order to show off to all of the single ladies present. If you were traveling to Greece during this festival, would you take part, stay off to the side, or just help build the fire?
Fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, I would definitely participate. I'm married, but that's not the reason why. I would participate because part of the reason why you vacation overseas is not just to see the pretty things that other people have done in another part of the world, but to experience a culture. And when you do it that way, it gets so much more fun, and you sometimes find a part of yourself that you didn't know was there. And so I would help them build the bonfire, partly because I'm an engineer and I realize that the TP method is totally the best for a bonfire. And I'd go all the way to the end, jumping through the fire. Granted, I already am taken, so no matter how awesome I am at it, no girl gets to win out of this. But I do the whole thing because you get to experience the culture firsthand. And when you do that, you do find part of yourself in their culture. And so definitely would go 100%. With all the other Grecian men probably burning my behind in the process. That's your tabletop Toastmaster.
Thomas. It's actually a fantastic segue into our next question. And that is, summer solstice is one of the oldest holidays, really, in the world. People celebrating the sun since they've been alive. And with that, it's not one we necessarily celebrate here in the United States quite as much. There are all sorts of traditions that we don't necessarily celebrate in the United States. Some that I find to be rather fascinating. Some of my favorites are Oktoberfest, that they celebrate in Germany, the Day of the Dead, that they celebrate in Mexico, and even the Chinese New Year is an event that they only have in China every year. So my question to you, Toastmasters and guests, is what tradition, what celebration do they celebrate outside the U.S. that they wish that they had here? And you can feel free to take one of the examples that I just mentioned. I'll call on somebody. All right, Rosemary. I was going to call on you anyway.
The question of what holiday that we do not celebrate in the United States I wish we would bring here. There was a pause in wanting to volunteer for that because I honestly, I can't think of anything on the top of my head, but one thing that I do wish we somewhat had in the United States, and I'm not particularly a religious person by any means, but in the Philippines there is this huge celebration. Like everyone in the country goes to where my family's from, Cebu City. It's and it's part of the island of Cebu, the middle of the Philippines. It's far from the capital. Nobody in Cebu really likes Manila and all that kind of stuff. And this is where Christianity was brought into the Philippines. The Spanish brought what we call the Santo Nino, the statue of baby Jesus, into the city, and Christianity somewhat started there. And everyone comes, and it's just a huge fiesta. The streets, these huge boulevards and avenues are just filled with people. Churches are just cramped with people, packed like sardines, and there's food, of course, all the comfort food that I grew up with, and hot chocolate and lights and fireworks, which can get kind of dangerous, which is part of the fun too. And I wish that was something we had here, more so for a lot of the close bonding, family, drinking, and eating with friends and family and celebrating. So I wish we had that here in the United States.
All right. Sounds like a great time. I've got one final question. And coming back to the summer solstice, it is, as I mentioned, one of the world's oldest celebrations, dating back to at least 3100 BC, when scientists have dated the Stonehenge that's in England. This final question is, what is a tradition that you and or your family like to keep during the holidays?
During the holidays or during the summer?
Well, it could be the summer holidays.
Oh,
My house holidays start in
Or the
January
summer.
and
Maurice,
December.
come on up.
Thank you very much. Mr. Topic Master, fellow Toastmasters honored guest. There's one of the traditions that at least we used to keep during the summer, and I don't know to what extent, not too deep to an extent, but the 4th of July or Independence Day. I don't remember the last time we kept the holiday under its technical intent, celebrating the birth of the United States, as opposed to just having barbecues and playing baseball or going to the park or going swimming. But that is one of the holidays during the summer that our family traditionally celebrated during the year. Mr. Topic Master.
Thank you, Maurice. Sounds like a great time. In the summer, it's just a great time to get outside, whether on the holidays or just during the summer. But as I mentioned, that is my last question. So that's just a crossword right there. I'll turn the podium right back over to Maurice as our Toastmaster to continue.
At this time, we'll go into our evaluation period, and our general evaluator for tonight is Cody.
The club got off to a good start. Thomas did a great job at announcing the new officers that will be getting inducted next week, so that'll be interesting, and everyone can get used to the new roles hopefully rather quickly, and it's a smooth transition. And I want to thank both the volunteers for the pocket speeches. Thank you for filling the meeting, because it's always tough to get up here and just do a speech when you're not prepared. And with that, I will introduce our first evaluator for Thomas's speech. And the first evaluator tonight is going to be Rosie.
As always, Thomas has a great presence up here at the lectern, and I always think I thought you had a great use of the space. It was very natural, and it seems like you weren't talking at us, you weren't lecturing us, or anything of that sort. It seemed like we were having a conversation with you without us actually responding verbally. And so I enjoyed it. It just felt very natural, and it was easy to listen to you and enjoyable to watch. You had great eye contact. You made eye contact with everybody here at the table, and Maurice over there at the camera in the corner of the room. And I also like the fact that whenever you started to talk about how serious your job was, the opposite of the comedic end of the spectrum, you actually made your tone a little bit more serious. There was still lightness to it, which it made sense for the flow and the progression of your speech. And I appreciated the actual fact that's like, okay, your speech would match your topic, the topic content you were speaking to. And first off, the fact that you just came up here and did over a 5-minute speech on the whim was very impressive anyway. And I thought your use of pauses was very beneficial as well. Whenever you would make a statement as to how to apply something, why something works a certain way, gave us a little time to let it sink in for us, and
have that point sink in before you give them new information. So it makes the speech a little bit easier to follow. it also makes the speech hit home a little bit better. So that's one area that I saw that could use a little improvement. You were very expressive. You had plenty of vocal variety. Your organization did flow because you were using these stories and these examples in stories to get you from one thing to the next. And that was very helpful in guiding us through your topic. Your word usage was really good. I liked how you gave us a term and then defined the term in simpler, clearer words. So when you talked about congruent feedback, and then when you talked about micromanagement, you gave normal word definitions for those. That was very good word usage. Your body language was very just natural and expressive. What I would say that you could do differently about the speech was just put your pauses in better places, or just possibly have a few more pauses. That wouldn't have hurt either, to be able to allow us to keep up with you, because at a few points you got really quick as you were crowd covering some stuff. But the thing I did like about the speech is that you use stories to organize it, because stories really help draw you in and keep you engaged. And I thought that was a very good way of doing it. So that is everything it says here. So I'll spend the rest of the time to channel that. It's up there for the time for everybody to keep track of it.
All right. For evaluations, thank you for that. Now we will have the timers report for Rosemary.
Timers report for the first speech. Thomas, you had a speech of 5 minutes and 6 seconds. Diego, your speech had a time of 5 minutes and 29 seconds. Going into table topics. Table topics. Cody, you had a speech of 51 seconds. Thomas, 1 minute and 4 seconds. Myself, 1 minute 47 seconds. Maurice, 1 minute and 4 seconds. And for the evaluators, I had a speech of 2 minutes and 39 seconds, and Thomas, 3 minutes and 19 seconds. And that is it for the time.
Thank you, Rosemary. Next is the grammarian report from Diego.
Okay, everyone. Our first speaker at the lectern was Maurice, who successfully used the word of the day, myopia. Very well done. No crutch words. Thomas, your favorite crutch words involve saying so or but and then having a long pause. And I counted 4 times. I actually was myopic myself today because I did not assign a grammarian for when I spoke. So first of all, there's another crutch word right there, but I successfully used the word of the day. And I assumed that I counted that I'm sure at some point I had 4 times I did a crutch word. Cody, at the lectern I counted, you said so, pause once, and you also said you know. Let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, Rosemary, your favorite crutch word is and then a pause. You did that over 13 times today. And then finally, Mike, you used myopia, word of the day, good job. And then 3 times you did a filler word with a pause in between.
Thank you, Diego. Great report. That ends the evaluation period of our meeting. I will now relinquish the lecture back to Toastmaster Maurice.
Okay, there are no awards tonight, and in place of educational overview, if no one has one, I'll just give a brief.
I had one prepared, but if you have something, I'm willing to let you
Well,
know.
it's just a brief reminder, and I only see 2 people here who have access to Club Central.
I'm punching them in tonight after I get home.
Okay,
Officers.
all right. Good deal. But if you do have a significant educational overview, I'll let you present that.
So, during the last year, I've given a lot of these. I'm sure Cody, who's been here for most of the weeks during this year, and Maurice, who has been, knows I've given a lot of educational overviews. part of being president is you fill in whatever role needs filled. But as part of preparing my next speech in the new Pathways program, I ended up with it suggested it, but it was the one I wanted, so I need to make this very clear. Mentoring path. Most of my path is about giving feedback. And so as part of preparing for that speech, we talked about some key things that are helpful in evaluations. First, to do a good evaluation, getting up here and being done in 30 seconds generally is not going to cover everything that was done well and could be improved, even for a 4-minute speech. So you're going to be looking at something that's at least 90 seconds, probably 2 to 3 minutes like it has on here. The second is that you're going to say things you observed. I tried to do that tonight with Diego's evaluation because this has been the last week that I learned really well how to do mentoring type evaluation. And so you observe this thing, and then you say the results of that observation. If they ask, you can provide feedback on how to improve it. Or you can provide some minor feedback on how to improve it. But mostly you say, this is what I observed, and this is the result of that observation. You did stories, and I could see that everybody was enthralled with your stories and so that they stayed engaged in your speech. You used 1.5 million filler words, and I saw people got bored. They're probably connected. And so you help them make these connections between the result and the action that caused that result. That's the second thing. And the third key thing is you try to avoid your opinion and your judgment. So if I'm up here and I'm talking really, really fast and I'm really moving around and my hands are everywhere and you think I'm nervous, you don't say that in your evaluation. You could say, I saw that you had a whole lot of energy. And you may have been having some issues containing that energy. Maybe we can talk about this after the meeting, about where that energy came from and what we can do about that. So instead of saying, I can tell you're really nervous and this is a great way to fix nervousness. Instead of doing that second one, you make the observation, if you were really energetic, really full of energy, really made it hard to follow you because it was very distracting. One is issuing a judgment of you're nervous. The other is this is just what I saw and how it affected your speech. And so you try to avoid these judgments, opinions we'll call them, in the evaluation. And you try to just go with what you observed and what the results of that observation is at all times. And in doing that, you're able to give constructive feedback that's not personal. And as crazy as it sounds, that's when it hurts. When someone looks at you and says, I could tell you were nervous, all of a sudden I'm hurt and I'm going to go on defense. I'm not going to be as open to the rest of your feedback. You're like, I saw you had a lot of energy up there. Maybe we can talk about how you can get a hold of that energy and control that energy through a speech. Cody can vouch for this. My first table topics, which was the first speech I ever gave in this club, I covered 5 minutes of material in 90 seconds. Because I was hauling. I was super nervous. I will admit it. I can admit that I was nervous. I was super nervous. And that all came out as massive quantities of energy, talking fast, hands going everywhere, literally grabbing the lectern to try to get a little bit of control of it. It was not pretty. But then I had the beautiful Lawrence Crompton after the meeting said, so where do you get all that energy when you speak? I was like, I was nervous. I was really nervous. And he taught me, just in a quick conversation, some techniques to kind of control that nervousness. One, you notice in every speech I walk around. This is to get rid of that energy so it doesn't come out here and in my hands. So those are the keys to evaluation. Time and place is that fourth one. Inviting a conversation after a meeting if it's going to be something that might get a little personal. So you're not doing it in front of everybody, and so it can be a little bit better received. because one-on-one criticism feels a lot nicer than group criticism. So I wanted to leave that with you as my last educational overview for a while, so that we can all improve on our evaluations, because that's really what Toastmasters is about, being evaluated so you can grow. And with that, I guess I don't need to turn the lectern back to the Toastmaster because he's covered all the rest of his stuff. So I will just reserve it for me in a different role as the president. So we still haven't received the awards that we've put in for a few of our Toastmasters. So our new president next week will be hopefully able to do that at the end of next week's meeting. But our new president is currently our acting vice president of education. So he will go over the agenda for next week. Ready to start?
Do you have any volunteers for any roles?
Okay. I'll volunteer for a speech. I'll try to get a speech prepared next
I still
week.
can't get was it best?
Better Speaker Series.
Yeah, I can't, they won't register on Easy Speak for some reason. I see them on
Yeah.
Speak, you've registered like 3 times.
Yeah, I can't get him to add either.
So, I don't
Okay.
know, it's weird.
Okay, I'll just save the evaluation, the time I get my next award, so,
Okay.
Yeah, just submitted.
yeah.
Cody, I volunteer to be timer next week.
I will serve as Toastmaster. In the year that I've been president, I think I've been Toastmaster once.
Okay.
Did you hear that? Rosemary's giving a speech. That's what I was trying to do. Joking, Mary. Rosemary.
Maybe we can.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
I'll fill that randomly.
And how much longer are you here for, Mike? How many more?
I think I've got like 4 weeks,
4 weeks? Next month's the last month, okay.
maybe 5, I don't know.
For those of you who didn't hear, Mike has gotten a job in a different state,
Yeah.
one that's not so hot.
Going to Omaha, Nebraska.
So he will be with us for 1 more month, and then we'll have to give him a send off like we gave Yu Ying when she went to California.
Okay.
I think you were gone.
Oh,
You were traveling
But
that
then-
month,
oh, okay.
so okay. Unless there's some other business someone would like to bring forward, our meeting's adjourned.